Well, dive right in. What is Pension Tracker?
So Pension Tracker is a site that we have here at CEPR. CEPR is the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research. And it has been live for about a year, and it provides very detailed pension data on local government agencies in California. So instead of having just one big number for CalPERS, for example, it goes down to individual agencies. So you can go down to cities that have 100 people, special districts that have 6 employees. So it goes down to the, into the weeds essentially, and it gives people, I think, a better sense of what the pension challenges are in their own neighborhoods as opposed to statewide.
Why did you create Pension Tracker?
Well, I've always found that when I have a conversation with someone about the public pension challenge that we have here in California or anywhere, that people kind of get lost in the numbers if you stay at the highly aggregated numbers. So if you talk about the California unfunded liability, for example, what I call the pension debt for California, people, which as you know is probably more than $1 trillion now, people say, is that a big number? And I try to put that into perspective. I always, when I talk about the $1 trillion plus shortfall for the state, I always remind people that the annual general fund budget for the state is 120 something billion, at least this last year. So it's $1 trillion is a big problem. It's a big number. But people at the local level would say, well, what does that mean for me? What does it mean for me in Palo Alto? What does it mean for me in Stockton? What does it mean for me at the, you name it, irrigation district in the Central Valley? People need to be able to take that very big number and bring it down to the local level, because that will give them a much better sense of what their own particular situation is. So that's the reason that we developed Pension Tracker, was to take this massive number at the state level and to bring it down and to make it real for someone at the local level.
What is the difference between pensiontracker.org and the U.S. pensiontracker.org?
Right. So the pensiontracker.org is the California default. So if you go there, you get the California agencies. And again, right now we have about 1,700 agencies that are covered. And we have data from 2008 until 2013. We're adding 2014 data in about 2 weeks, actually. The U.S. Pension Tracker data, which is us.pensiontracker.org, has summary statistics for all 50 states. We thought it would be useful to be able to compare California with other states. I mean, how does California stack up against Illinois, for example, and how does Illinois stack up against Texas versus Florida versus Utah? And so the real purpose of the U.S. side was to be able to at least have some summary data so you can rank the states. I think we talked about this before, we were surprised that the state that it seems to be in the worst shape in terms of the unfunded liability per household is Alaska. Alaska, the pension debt per household is well over $100,000. I'm not sure what's driving that, but at least it gives people a reference, and so they can sort of see where they are. California is not in great shape. We're number 3. We're 3rd worst on the list.
And how much debt per household for California?
About $77,000 as of 2013. The 2014 numbers will probably be about the same. They won't be appreciably different. Once we add 15 and 16, though, it will be much worse for California, because as you know, the investment rate of return the last couple of years has not been very good, and that's going to drive that number up for California considerably.
So we could well be over $100,000 in debt per household for pension debt alone in the state of California.
I don't know if it would get to 100,000, but it will certainly be higher than 77. And I mean, if I had to guess today, again, and I feel more comfortable with the numbers in front of me, but it's probably 85 to 90, maybe somewhere in that area as of the end of 2016. That's probably what we'll see.
Okay.
Maybe more. It could be 100, but it's certainly going to be higher than today.
Now, one sticking point that I ran into in explaining Pension Tracker is the difference between actuarial basis and market basis for calculating unfunded pension liabilities. Could you just explain what the distinction is there and what
Sure.
the significance of that?
Sure.
distinction?
So the actuarial basis is kind of the best case scenario. It's the assumed scenario. The actuarial basis is what CalPERS and CalSTRS and independent system actuaries assume they will earn on an annual basis. That number is generally 7.5% for everyone in the state. So, and it's a little bit of a Walt Disney imaginary number. It really is. It's what they expect to earn, but it's not what they're going to earn. Obviously, you can't predict the future. And so what we've done is we've said that because these are in theory guaranteed benefits. I mean, state and local government has said no matter what, we're going to pay you this. Then you should really not assume such a high rate of return. You shouldn't assume 7.5%. You should assume something closer to a long-term treasury, U.S. Treasury, 20 years, which is what CalPERS does. They assume when they calculate what they call termination liabilities, they take a 20-year treasury. And that 20-year treasury today is only about roughly 3%. So instead of assuming 7.5%, you assume 3% on your investments, and that has a huge impact on the outcome here. So the actuarial methods and actuarial number is really what CalPERS, CalSTRS, and others assume they'll earn. The market is what is safer to assume you'll earn.
And what return is the market based on, the market rate?
The market rate that we use is exactly what CalPERS uses for their termination, what they call their termination liabilities. And it is a 20-year treasury, so a 20-year treasury bond, rounded to the nearest 1/4 of a point. And I think the number in 2014 is 3%. I'm sorry, I think it's 2.75%, but it's around 3%.
Okay.
And again, if you, I mean, because of the magic or the destructive power, I guess, of compound interest, if you only earn 3% and you assume 7.5%, you get into very, very serious trouble very quickly, and that's what's happening.
What is the total market value of pension liabilities for public agencies in California?
The unfunded liability?
Yeah.
The unfunded liability, again, is around, the latest number we have on Pension Tracker is around $1 trillion.
For all public agencies in California?
Yes, that's state and local, and it covers state, teachers, school districts, special districts, cities, counties, everybody.
And that's 2013 data?
Yes, and we'll be updating 2014. We have, it's a big data build, as you can imagine. We have 9 of the 10 files done. We're working on the very last one right now.
Thank you. What is the significance of other post-employment benefit obligations, and why does Pension Tracker include that data?
Well, we're adding that. So we don't
Okay.
have it yet, but we'll be adding that. I'm hoping that we'll add that in maybe a couple of months. We've had a tough time collecting the data. It turns out that a lot of agencies don't report that, or they report it every 2 or 3 years. Probably half of the agencies do not provide the data do not make it available to the public. So that's been a challenge for us, but we've covered most of the population. On a population-weighted basis, we're in decent shape. That's important because it's yet another albatross around California's neck. It's yet another unfunded liability. And in some cases, the retiree health or OPEB obligations are worse because so many agencies are paying as they go. They don't have assets. I mean, if you look at some of these agencies, a large number of them,
LA County.
Well, if you have, you need to have assets that are close enough to being able to pay off your obligations. But because they're doing this on a pay-as-you-go basis, they have zero, literally. So you might have $100 million financial obligation to your retirees and your future retirees, yet you may have $0 in the bank. I mean, imagine that. If you were an individual, if you were a business, if you were anybody, and you had obligations of millions of dollars, and you had nothing set aside for that, that ought to cause people, that ought to cause a lot of alarm. Now, one of the arguments is that retiree health benefits are not as ironclad as pension benefits, and we've seen that in some cases where cities or others have just said, we're not going to pay this, and we're not going to pay it, we're dropping this. And the courts have ruled thus far that public agencies are able to do that more easily than with pensions.
Okay, now we're just going to go on to pensiontracker.org, and I just wanted to look up a hypothetical agency.
Sure.
First, the data and methodologies here if you want to know more, but really all the data you can find on this front page, and I found it to be pretty user-friendly. Let's go ahead and take a look at a sample locality. How about the city of Concord? I've been looking at them recently because, pension and benefit costs actually total about 30% of general fund revenue. So I know that's a real cause for concern. One thing that I've found, so could you just explain the data here? We have CalPERS plans. There's no all plans here, but in terms of just going down the list here, this market liability, what is that?
Right. So left-hand side, first column is just the categories, and as you see here, if you move your mouse over those, you'll see little information icons pop up. So just go to that. So we've got the definitions there, so you don't have to go back to the glossaries. Hopefully that'll make it easier for folks. So categories on the left-hand side, and this is the summary table. There are only I think 12 or 13 categories or variables here, and if you click on the CalPERS plans, that actually splits this.
You can use your mic too.
That actually splits this into miscellaneous and safety, because there are some agencies, most agencies, cities and counties obviously have safety and non-safety or miscellaneous employees. So we've got that there, that divides it up. All plans, we had that because there are some agencies, not a lot, that are both CalPERS and they have their own independents. For example, San Jose. San Jose has 2 independent pension systems, plus they have a small number of people in CalPERS. And so to add those together, we had to segregate them and separate them this way. So we have CalPERS, all plans would be independents. For Concord, it's a CalPERS agency, there's no other game in town, and that's why we've done that. And so going down the category list, market liability is, again, that is the liability of the system for the city of Concord, assuming that lower discount rate that we talked about. The value of assets is the market value of assets as reported by CalPERS. That's how much they think of it as how much they have in the bank. So they owe $600 million, they have $239 million in the bank, which means that on a market basis, they're about $361 million short. So that would be their pension debt or unfunded liability. Discount rate shows there was 3.7%. That was the assumption CalPERS used in 2013. That's why we've done it here. Market funded ratio is just the assets divided by liabilities. That's about 40%. Then the next set of numbers down, actuarial liability, again, that's sort of the CalPERS number. That's what they report. And if you assume that you've got that it's a $356 million liability, and you have assets of $239 million, you're about $116 million short. So even using the CalPERS numbers, even with CalPERS assuming that 7.5% rate of return every year forever, they're still only 67% funded. Then down below that we have just these 4 metrics, the summary metrics: debt per household, and debt per capita on a market basis or an actuarial basis. And that's intended to show people what the magnitude is. You know, how much does it matter? So, I mean, the way I would look at this is I would say in Concord, every household there they don't see this, but they actually should be getting a bill every month that says, you owe $8,100. Someone owes $8,100. Maybe it's not you, maybe the state will step in, maybe there's some other funding out there. But if we treated this as a separate entity, which I think is the way to do this, you'd be about $8,100 short.
And that doesn't include the state liability or other special districts that household might reside in.
Does not.
Just the city of Concord.
Correct. It doesn't include the county, doesn't include special districts, does not include school districts.
Thank you. Let's just take a quick look at U.S. Pension Tracker. I don't know if I have that.
I think it's if you can go to the sorry. Here, there it is.
Okay.
Right. So you see here, there's the California. So if you can go back to California. The U.S. has California. You can go whatever. I'm sorry. You can go back and forth between the two. Is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay.
So California, you hit California.
I can
you go to California.
Pension Tracker.
You hit California. You go back to
it's really
US.
the same site. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
I realize that.
Yeah.
Now.
Okay.
And so just this one's a little bit more straightforward in my opinion, but you can actually search for a state. If somebody's in another state,
right,
they can find their state. And this, could you just explain what data you have on here?
What we've done for this is, because there are thousands and thousands of agencies across these states, and unfortunately we just don't have the resources to look at in detail every state. What we do is we look at the major state pension systems. So the equivalent in California would be, we'll look at CalPERS, CalSTRS, and UC. But we won't look at the independent systems. And as you know, there are a lot of independents: LA, San Jose, San Francisco, etc. And so we've done the same thing for the other 49 states. So we have about 200 systems that are in our database, and then we make some assumptions, fairly general assumptions, about what the local systems in those states look like. So for example, we might capture, say, in the state of Hawaii, I believe it is, there's no such thing as a local system. It's all state. It's all state systems. California, about 2/3 of what we have here is in the state system or state systems, and the other third are independents. So we have to make assumptions about these smaller non-state systems in other states. We then add those together and come up with that total number. And again, if we had all the money in the world, we would be doing the same thing in these other states we're doing on Pension Tracker, but we just don't have the resources to do it. But this gives people, I think, a pretty good sense of what the burden is in these other states and the financial condition of these other systems are.